appreciate that. Thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to be here, right? In this seminar, right? And I understand that this is the beginning of the seminar for this semester, and also it's an honor. Though the topics here are a little bit technical, I will try to maintain the discussion tractable, so you can be free to interrupt if you want. I know that sometimes the moderator says no, that save it for the end, but if you feel that you have a question and or something that you wondered, please feel free to make it, right? So from since many years, I have been working in this book, right? It's the one that I'm presenting today. It was published the last year by Cambridge Scholars Publishing, and I am being presenting my work, right? It has been a very long journey. I don't recommend today we'll have a general overview, some general introduction, some very an abstract discussion of the chapters, and some final concluding remarks, right? I don't recommend to take so long. This took like from 2008 or something. It took a lot of time, and also some publishing houses didn't approve, and I needed to be kind of persistent. And at the end, right, it evolved this document in a more comprehensive, kind of like approach about the issue of justice, right? Nowadays, we do have some that will be clear for some of you. I start with a kind of like a provocative quote from Jesus, which says, Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. And you think this might be a religious topic, but basically what it is enhanced here, what is argued here, is in relation to the pragmatic view of the Jewish approach, which always try to make good to the people around us. And the Hellenic view, which was very pervasive at that time, it was about kind of discussing about the things, discussing, endlessly discussing, right? So I will try to take like 30 minutes of an overview. Also, I will be talking not just about this book, but also what I do, and hopefully that will be interesting for you. It will be very surprising for you that these maybe boring topics, right? Philosophy topics, methodology topics, they are very related with the discussions that we have today. So, and we do have some perspective about it, and how do we solve that issue? It's something that I would try to elucidate, right? For instance, if you think that somehow the society has not been kind towards you, and that you lack of opportunities, and then somehow you want to move into this social arena, right? You want to climb that step by step, but you want some opportunities from societies, then you have kind of like a leftist type of view, and that clashes with the view of other people that think that you should evolve by yourself, right? And this kind of like more the rightist type of view, and it is not possible to have both, right? So that clashes one to another, right? And then it is important to decide what perspective you have, and also during this discussion you will see that a lot of time the most important people around us, it is forgotten. So to myself, one of my passion about economic research is methodology, and it's about we think as economists, as philosophers, right? We do philosophy. We just open a can of beer, and then we start to talk. Then on Friday, and then we became philosophers. So this is how it started, right? There in old Greece, right? I used to have like a friend from Greece there, and she told me that was kind of after every meal they kind of open a bottle of wine and they just start to talk. And she said that was the approach for philosophy, right? And so we do use different perspectives, right? So I like to wonder, like, a question when they see kind of like an axiom or something that should be taken as granted. I wonder why is that? So I write about 2 topics, rationality and justice, and today we will talk about justice as such, right? So, and then this book has been already published, as I already told you, right? So I have good news for you. This book is available, right, in Amazon and the editorial house, but and it's quite expensive. But now there is a new edition, a paperback edition, which will be available very soon, and it's kind of like half the price, right? So I received that new yesterday. So this is some of you, and also I'm working with my daughter Naomi, which is here. So she's with me, making company to me, and she's working with me and in the Spanish type of version, right? So I'm trying to work in this issue, make available this research a little bit more than what it is, right? So I argue basically in a nut, right? This very pervasive view of justice, which is from Aristotle and Aquinas and Marx, is not needed, right? So I'm not leftist. I talk about justice, but I'm not leftist, which is quite difficult to find, right? So I argue for a less inflammatory type of approach in regards to social justice. I also discussed that definitely we need to be responsible about the people, the poor, the orphans, the widows. It is our responsibility, because somehow someday we could be ended up being a poor person, an orphan, or a sick person, and we need from one another, right? There is no one coming from Mars, no alien coming to help me. We have just us, right? So this book the structure have 2 parts, 3 chapters each. The first one is very philosophical, right? Maybe Diego like this sort of stuff, right? But the second part is more technical in the issue of the scientific discussion that we have nowadays. So if you like religion, methodology, this sort of stuff, maybe the first part is for you. If you like more statistics, mathematics, maybe the second part is for you. And it can be tackled separately without any problem. So this is the chapters that I do have here, right? So as I told you, the philosophical historical discussion of justice, the first part. The second part is like more methodological about the justice approaches, right? And the first one, we have some discussion about ethics, and I go deeply into ancient writers. And the second one is about a discussion about the new and the old approach. And the third one, I kind of try to apply a new pragmatic approach towards solving the issue of distribution, right? Where all of us will be part of this kind of system, right? Later on, chapter 4, which is the one I will focus a little bit more, is discussions in economic science about the different topics of justice. And chapter 5 is a little bit more technical. I will not tackle that very much today. It's in regards to critique of the capability approach of Amartya Sen, right? So as I told you, right, we have some kind of like nested discussions within the chapters, and I start today with a general introduction, which says that the world is unequal. So you may say, duh, yeah, of course. But let me tell you that when I started this research like 20 years ago, really nobody cared. Nobody cared. Where people were more eager to focus in issues of not in the institution, but maybe about production, right? Maybe about some kind of ethics, but not really about social inequality, right? After 2006, right, 2008, there were some movements that tried to that emerge, right? We have this violent uprising in Tunisia, which was known later on as the Arab Spring. Later on, 2011, Occupy Wall Street, and also there at that time, Senator Bernie Sanders, they call himself democratic socialist, which was unnoticed, right? Because American politics do not like this kind of approaches, right? It's more related with Russia and that sort of stuff, communism, and that's like a bad word there, right? But at that time, it was okay. It was okay to say that I care for the poor, right? And nowadays, there's no politician or ideological leader having a different electoral platform than social justice, right? So how that comes, I cover in chapter 1 that in a series of statements, Pope Ratzinger, right, he tried to change after eight centuries of not changing anything about what was wrong for the Catholic Church, of the definition what was wrong, which is the sin, right? They change it. They change it, and they say that was not more like not more sinful to be an adulterer or pornography or this sort of stuff, or eating too much or lust. No, what was important more was kind of like genetical manipulation, human destitution, and social inequality that changed it. So actually he went to the United Nations and he was publishing this kind of new stuff. At that time, the Catholic Church was having a lot of serious problems because they were accused of a systematic and institutional covering of pedophilia and this sort of stuff, and they tried to change the focus, right? In any case, this kind of like new waves of equality-minded people, they start to spread around the world. Nowadays, the focus changed very rapidly, but this has been there for a lot of time, a long period of time. Sorry, and in any science, people supposedly care about the poor. In administration, they call that kind of like sustainable management. In economics, we have like an author, Piketty, 2014, and with the study of capital in the institution, which not surprisingly, always a type of Robin Hood policy is prescribed. So we are aware that that we live in an unequal world. Chapter 1, for instance, is it focused very much on the essence of the Marxist argument, right? There are different types of Marxists, but Marx argues in related to kind of like they like that at the end all the distribution is equal, right? The quality of result is what is called, right? Others, which are not that leftist, they allow for that kind of like intermediate type of inequalities, as long as the size of the cake is getting larger and people is getting a larger share, right? So I discussed that. I went to the nowadays it's easy to get very trustable resources from ancient sources, but I say that this Hellenic concept is very inflammatory and it should be rejected, right? So also I discussed actually nowadays the chapter 1 is very interesting because I discussed the issue of anti-Semitic sentiment that Marx was very eager to enlarge. Aristotle said, you know, everything in society that is wrong is the rich fault, and Marx said, yeah, that is true, but nowadays the rich are Jewish people, and all the sentiment, all the hatred towards them was channeled, was funneled there, and Karl Marx was kind of like the master behind this Jewish persecution. So if you are interested about this sort of thing, please read chapter 1. So anyway, basically I try to tackle both focuses, the Hellenic one, but at the end, I try to say that all this Hellenic type of style of distributions is kind of like a very ethereal. Everyone likes to think in a justice world, but no one likes to do something about it, right? And we live we have this the tragedy of the commons, where everyone thinks exactly the same, but no one do anything, right? And this is the part that I tackled there, that I criticized there. And I compare it. For instance, in the Jewish tradition, it is right to be rich as long as you were prudent, you save, and you were a hardworking person, right? And sometimes this is not very clear. Theoretically, it seems to be that every person that is rich, it is demonized, right? It is demonized. And on the other hand, the poor is sanctified the poor. And we see that even in our country, many Latin American countries, the poor is sanctified. The poor is never in the wrong. And the rich is always, is never right. So, I'm sorry, I said the poor is never, the poor is never in the wrong. The poor is always wrong, right? So I tackle this issue, right? That it is theoretically a failure, having an approach that do not take into account individual responsibility, right? So this happened again and again. I try to argue and to make an enlight, right, about this issue in order to take away all the populism sort of discourse, right? I keep going in chapter 1 in regards to this. I quote from the very essence of the Jewish tradition around the Jewish temple, right? How people were there, but not just to give money, but to be forgotten of their sins, as long as the priests were aware that they were kind of like good citizens. So it was a very it was supervision there, and not just kind of like a wasteful type of cult, right? So I try to tackle that and to get from that essence something that we can apply today, so we can take care of our people around us, starting with our own family, with ourselves, with our own family, and with people around us. So that is totally forgotten by the Hellenic tradition. People think very much about going to the forest in Brazil to tackle the issue of orphans in Colombia or on the Eastern Europe. But what about the people that is around you? I don't know. That's the issue of the government, that, or the rich people here. They should do something about it. Me, no. I will put a like to some social cause, and I will feel very, very great. I'll go and drink my Starbucks, and that will be okay. It's not bad to have a Starbucks coffee, but to think that just doing that and that the problems are solved, that is a problem, right? So chapter 2, it is dense in regards to philosophy. In the basis of the economic science today. If you like about discussing what is behind economic science today, the one that uses mathematics and statistics and algebra and all that stuff, you like to think, and what is behind that, chapter 2 is for you. So I discuss John Rawls' approach, the Kantian approach of Dworkin, Parfit, etc. Also, utilitarianism and things like that. So chapter 2, it is the basis of that. And I compare it with something that I propose, which is a neighboring tax, which is what if I stop giving my money to the government, which I don't know how that is used, and I use that money, right? Not for that, but for the people around me. And I am inclined to think that that will be much more fruitful. Of course, one part should be going to the IRS or to Hacienda, how we call that in here in Mexico, right? But a substantive part should be invested in the people around us. We don't have this kind of thing. We think, oh, that is kind of like this kind of like social institutions that do this kind of social work. It's not like that. Is because that there are a lot of biases and that sort of stuff. So I will skip a little bit more. The chapter 3 is very focused in philosophy. Because I discussed the different type of Jewish knowledge. I thank one of the readers of my book that he encouraged me to do that. I compare to nowadays the thinking in Israel is very similar to the Western countries, which is more in the line of the Catholic tradition. But that is because there has been something there. I do some issues of I cover some historical issues. If you like religion as such, and comparative studies of religion, chapter 3 is for you, right? I discuss there Pharisaism, old tradition, Catholic tradition, and things like that. If you like to go deep in this discussion, chapter 4, which is more for this kind of audience, right? For the people working in economics, right? We have these definitions about what equality, what justice is. It might be surprised, but let me tell you that the definition we have today, or the thought that we have today that Greeks were very philosophical and they were discussing endlessly, was not like that. Aristotle, when we read it, particularly in Nicomachean Ethics, right, we see a very focused Aristotle in the issue of economic dimension. He was very focused in the issue of, if you have 3 and I have 1, we should have just 2. Very statistical, this sort of stuff. I make all the citations there. And I also talk about what value judgments are. For instance, value judgments are when we professors, we say, this is science, and we believe that, but somehow it's not that science. It's kind of like an axiomatic belief, right? Based on my own school. And I discuss what value judgments are. For instance, value judgment right now is very inclined to think on a more equal distribution, right? That doesn't come from a scientific source, simply it's a belief, right? And I tackle issues between poverty, inequality, destitution, and things like that. If you are working, for instance, in issues about poverty, or if you use, for instance, data for INEGI or from any source, a statistical source, chapter 4, it will be for you, because it will make a difference between what is poverty, what is inequality, what is social arrangement, what is institution, what is value judgments, and things like that. Things that can complement your own work, right? So I tackle Jeremy Bentham, because he's kind of like the father of utilitarianism, right? Surprisingly as well, Jeremy Bentham didn't have his own view from some books, but from some revelation. He dreamed that he was kind of like the father of a movement, something related like this kind of new age sort of stuff, and he make it academic, right? And he tried to make, at that time he criticized the monarchy of his country, but he dreamed several times at the same time, and at the same way that René Descartes made his own approach with discourse of the methods, right? So I also tackled there the libertarian approach, right, which said basically that you are entitled to your own to the product of your own labor, right? And I compare it. It's not comparable one with the other, right? Also, I tackled the Marxist heritage of within the economic science, which is called the basic needs approach school, right? If you, for instance, have been learned or have seen some human index from the United Nations, that comes directly from the basic needs approach. So we have a tension. We have a tension between those that say that they are very Marxist and those that think that they are not that so, right? I am very Marxist. I argue for that, and any intermediate inequality should be abolished, right? But others says, you know, that's too much. We should allow for that, but there are some tensions there, right? In the neoclassical setting, right? If you are more inclined for this type of mathematical approach, for instance, as Dr. Diego or some others, right? We have the discussion of Nozick or Adelman and Robinson, the type of function of Bergson and Samuelson, the Kaldon-Hicks criteria, right? The Saitowski rejection for that. All that was discussed around in the 60s or 70s from the last century. And also they were discussed what was the role of the government. It was a guarantor of property rights, as the neoclassicals argue, or the libertarians, or the nowadays perspective that the government should be a distributor, right? And there are some tensions there. So I just don't blame the messenger. The tensions are there. If I was able to explain this a little bit more clearly or simplistic way, I would do that. But people is very complicated nowadays, and they complicate for very, very simple things. So also in the utilitarian basis, we in the utilitarian setting, they are discussed about interpersonal comparisons, all the problems that come from the utilitarian approach, right? So that is compared with the Kantian approaches. Kantian approaches are very in line with philosophy or law as well. The people lawyers and all that people there, John Rawls, philosophers, they try to argue for a humanistic approach, in the sense that everyone should be encouraged to distribute fairly, right? And nowadays that is true. Everyone agrees that a fairer distribution should be done, but no one wants to take their own money to do that, right? They think, you know, I pay my taxes, and that's a problem of someone else. So, and many philosophers talk about this endlessly, right? So I cover the basic needs approach, Amartya Sen capability approach, right? Which is very pervasive. As I told you, you have read the Human Development Report. It is there. And recently, we came to the subjective well-being approach, where happiness is very important, but that is coming back to Jeremy Bentham, right? So nowadays, happiness is the most important, and everyone should be entitled, right? How am I doing with time, Diego? Is that okay?
I think we have some other 5 minutes, I think.
5 minutes, all right, good. Thank you, I appreciate that. Actually, we are closing, right? So what I propose is a Jewish alternative with focus in the real, more destitute, not not everyone that claim that it is destitute, because somehow the distribution within my culture tell me so, but really orphans, widows, migrants, the elderly, the sick, and the oppressed, right? These six groups are very established in the book of Deuteronomy, right? And we need a geographical interpretation, right, of those people. Will I care for orphans in Egypt? If you have a lot of money, maybe, but what if you just care about the people around you, right? And if we make some sort of like policy intervention towards that, we can solve and tackle really the issue of poverty that in the last century, in this century, has been more a problem than a solution, right? I suggest a different type of taxation, right, based on geographical links. The detail is there, right, and put the individual at the center of the social responsibility, not just ethereally, but pragmatically, right, and make that counting that in our contribution towards society, basically tax deductible. That's what I propose. So the chapter 4, the synthesis that took, if you want to think, what is the synthesis of your book? You want to buy it because I don't know, you are poor or you have other priorities. You see this graph. It is more or less what in chapter 4, what the libertarians think, Hellenic roots, all this, the taxonomy of the justice approaches, right? And with a Jewish new proposal, which is not new, but based on previous knowledge, right? Chapter 5, it is more like a technical issue for economists, right? Basically, I criticize here the capability approach of Sen. If you're interested, that is very important for you. If you care about gender or discriminated groups, which Sen is very common to use there, Amartya Sen, a Nobel Prize, you might use chapter 5. So I touch on very sensitive issues so that had been forgotten. In regards to ethics and social justice, I say that, and I track the Aristotle influence there, I say that the Marxist legacy from Aristotle and Aquinas, you might be surprised for that, should be rejected because it make a lot of people just talking about this issue endlessly and nothing is solved. The system provokes, the system may that this kind of people comes again and again and again. Don't blame the politicians. Blame the theory behind that. So, and I sustain that we need to do something, and we need some different arrangement, some different institution in order to responsibilize each individual for all the problems in society. So do something towards people in need. I mean, if you come from, if you question what this babbler have to say, what this person, I don't know this kind of guy, I don't like him. But what he says something about do something pragmatically, not just think on solving the issue of inequality in this world. Not just the reach of the government should be responsible to tackle the problem. We are responsible, and we need to do something about it. And I think that will be it. This is my data, and some of the bibliography that I used today. So, any question?